Good evening. Well, the big domestic news story of today is that a judge ruled yesterday that a family of 6 from Gaza, because they have a relative in the United Kingdom, can use the Ukraine family scheme and can come to the United Kingdom. And the judge, Hugo Norton-Taylor, made it absolutely clear this is on the basis of Article 8 of our old friend, the European Convention on Human Rights, the right to a family life. Well, as you can imagine, immediately people say, well, hang on a second. If this can be done on the basis that someone's got a relative here, there could be hundreds of thousands, millions perhaps around the world in conflict zones who would say, well, we want to come to the United Kingdom too. I would also add that if significant numbers of people did come from Gaza, that would pose, without doubt, a serious security risk to our country. But that's only part of the debate. The real debate here is who's in charge, who makes the law, who decides immigration policy in this country. Is it Parliament and the government, or is it judges using their own interpretations of the ECHR? Well, the Prime Minister was asked a question about this today, and this was his answer.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. I do not agree with the decision. She's right. It's the wrong decision. She hasn't quite done her homework because the decision in question was taken under the last government according to the legal framework of the last government. But, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. It should be Parliament that makes the rules on immigration. It should be the government that makes the policy. That is the principle, and the Home Secretary is already looking at the legal loophole which we need to close in this particular case.
Well, yes, Prime Minister, I agree entirely. It should be Parliament and government that makes these decisions. But is that what's happening? And I've got to ask you at home, who do you think is in charge? Is it the judges or, indeed, is it the government? It's going to be very interesting to see how this case shakes down. Give me your thoughts, Farage at GBNews.com. Now, I'm joined down the line by Paul Garlick, KC, a retired judge. Paul, it was quite a robust response in Parliament from the Prime Minister, but how can a Prime Minister overturn a ruling of a judge that was made in a court yesterday?
Well, Nigel, good evening. And
good evening.
The Prime Minister can't overturn the findings of a judge. He can appeal to the appeal court, and the Home Office, according to what I've read, rigorously resisted this case and resisted the appeal to the first level tribunal. But when a judge makes a decision, the judge is not assuming the powers of Parliament or the government. As you well know, because you're a parliamentarian, there are 3 seats of the rule of law. There's Parliament, who make the laws, the executive, who propose the laws to Parliament and then enforce them, and then the 3rd seat of the rule of law is the judiciary, who interpret the law and make sure that when a law is put into effect, it is put into an effect which in a lawful way and gives a right of appeal. So here the Home Office, and don't get me wrong, I think it was wrong that this family initially used the Ukrainian scheme to seek permanent leave to remain. And that may because they didn't realize it doesn't matter. But then when on appeal, they, as they were entitled to, argued Article 8 of the European Convention, the right to a family life. And the father's brother has been a citizen in the United Kingdom since 2007. And the judge pointed out, which is something I don't think you actually mentioned when you referred to Judge Norton's ruling, he referred to what he said the situation in Gaza, which he said remains exceptionally dangerous and dire. And I think we all agree, the situation is exceptionally dangerous and dire. Now, this family came to the United Kingdom, and of course, I accept entirely what they wanted to do was flee the conflict. And who would blame them for wanting to do that? But they do have some family connections in this country. the father of family, his brother, as I've said, has been here since 2007. And Article 8 of the European Convention says there is a right to family life. Now, the judge has to interpret that in a way, or actually, he has to interpret the decision of the Home Office and say, is that compatible with Article 8 of the European Convention? And he found in this case that it wasn't, and that therefore he allowed the appeal. He did make it absolutely clear, though, that this is not a finding which will have general effect. It's very case-specific on the evidence. And I haven't had the opportunity of seeing all the evidence that's before the judge, except the fact that the father of this family, his brother, is a UK citizen and has been since 2007. It's very difficult to go behind the decision of a judge, because the judge has much more information than we do. But he was just applying Article 8 of the European Convention, which is still part of our law.
So in terms of process, everything the judge did was correct?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with his decision, but the process he went through was impeccable,
Paul Garlick, thank you very much indeed. Well, he laid out the position legally very, very clearly. I'm joined by Heather Wheeler, former junior minister from the Foreign Office and one of our regulars on the show. I don't know whether you're popular or unpopular with the audience, but either way, Lloyd, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Now, once again, I mean, I understand the arguments Paul made. That is how it works. And, you know, it's all well and good for the Prime Minister to stand up and say what he said today, but the Prime Minister can't overturn this, can he?
Well, I think you have to wait for this to go to appeal, which it will do, and it will be appealed at the higher level. And I suspect the government will take this all the way up if they need to. And justice sometimes, the point of justice is that you will have judges that they follow the process, but they come to a conclusion that is different from what the mainstream legal conclusion will be. And when you go to appeal, you find it's corrected. That is the point of the justice system. So you have to be careful about making judgments before the final process is over. I actually think, however, that what the judge is getting at, that we should have special regard for people who are claiming asylum if they have links to Britain, is not a bad one.
Hang on, Lloyd. That could apply to millions of people around the world. Look, we just can't do this.
Well, at the moment, what we say is if you have managed to come over on a boat and pay lots of money to traffickers, we'll consider your application. I think we should be saying if you're Anglican, if you've got a link with the Methodist Church, or you've got a link with kind of British culture, or if you kind of a proper link with British culture, if you've studied here in the past, then you should be considered more than, say, if you don't have a religion that is based from Britain, or if you come from a completely different, if you don't have any links.
My worry is,
I think there is a case to say that should mean that you have a better hearing. Does that mean you should be let in automatically? No. But I think at the moment we have a system where basically you're let in automatically if you've come through a very dangerous route, but not if you've applied through a regular route.
Aren't we, Heather, in a bizarre situation where, frankly, the incorporation of the European Convention on Human Rights through the Human Rights Act of 1998, I mean, it's turned what most people consider to be fair justice on its head. I mean, this judge, I'm going to have a go. Hugo Norton Taylor, they all sound like that, don't they? I mean, this is the same.
Nothing wrong with the double-barreled name.
Well, I know. But I mean, this is the same judge who, in January 2022, blocked the deportation of an Afghan rapist who raped a 25-year-old sleeping woman in Glasgow because the Taliban take a dim view of sex offenders. I mean, again and again and again and again. Are we not seeing the ECHR? It just turned the whole thing on its head.
It's unbelievably difficult. I first of all, don't agree with the judge that just because they used the wrong scheme, we'll ignore all that. How can you possibly use the Ukrainian scheme to get yourself in here? Because it finished, it's closed. So, I mean, that's just nonsense in itself. So the first immigration judge threw it out. And this is the second appeal, and the second immigration judge has given it. So I think Lloyd is absolutely right in that it will go to a different judge and at a higher level, and I think it'll actually be thrown out. I think the next interesting point is whether they then go to the Supreme Court or wherever they go, but how quickly will Starmer actually bring a single paragraph bill to the House that will definitely get passed. It'll definitely go through. I mean, maybe the Greens will vote against it, but I think everybody else will vote. Well, the SNP as well, obviously, but everybody else will vote for it. And whether that comes into effect straight away, and then the appeal will be caught by that new law, I don't know, because a clever barrister will presumably say you actually got to go back to this was before the law came.
But whatever the Prime Minister tries to do to close... I mean, the loophole he refers to obviously is the Ukraine family scheme.
Yeah.
I get
Which
that.
doesn't exist anymore because the family scheme shut. So it is an historic loophole that probably no one else, or maybe one other family might be able to claim for. But I suspect there'll be zero.
But ultimately, do you see the argument that can easily be put that actually judges are going beyond what we would normally call interpretation of the law, and that ECHR gives them the ability and the power to do that, which effectively puts them in charge?
No, because it's not the ECHR. They could use another piece of British law and expand it beyond any realms of recognisability.
But it wouldn't be as explicit
and then appeal. It would be, the judge is stretching the elastic. At appeal and at the Supreme Court, the elastic should return back to normality, and I think that's what will happen. And I think the reality is that what we do see is the case that you mentioned previously about Afghanistan, and so that did go to appeal, and my understanding is that the chap ended up being removed from the country. So that is a perfect case in. And
there's case after. I mean, this judge has done this again and again and again
and again. And it gets corrected. His mistakes get corrected.
This is costing the viewers at home through their taxes a blooming fortune.
And then if a judge repeatedly does it, there is a review of the judge's capability. So that does happen. That is part of the process.
I wish it happened more.
The problem is, if you do it too quickly, you are seen to be undermining judges. You do have to allow a pattern of behaviour to occur.
Well, that's a very reasonable point of view, but I have to say, I bet most people hearing this morning were not feeling particularly reasonable about it. And of course... Denmark did let in, over the last few years, quite a lot of Palestinian refugees, and some of the associated crime and cultural problems that have come have been absolutely enormous. And there's no denying that. Heather, you've heard this argument, and it's been raging on in the country. Do you think we should stay with the ECHR? Do you think we should amend it? What do you think we should do?
I think we absolutely should amend it if we can.
Amend the Human Rights Act?
Yeah, because when we see other countries, in other European countries, actually have derogations from certain parts of it.
Yeah, and they do.
And so the suggestion to us is that, or the legal advice that we've had before, is that you can't do a derogation now. It's too late. And we're going, well, suck it and see, mate, I think we should try it. And then we're going to be taken to God knows which court.
I don't think we need it. Denmark is a perfect example. Last year, Denmark changed the rules. They let less than 1,000 refugees in, and they are compliant with the ECHR. So this idea that we have to have a derogation, I don't think is true. What we just need to do is a clear British law, and we need to make it very clear that judges must interpret the British immigration law first. That's what Denmark did, and it has been successful.
Well, Denmark had been very bitten, as I mentioned a moment ago, with the crime wave.
But they sorted it out.
Yeah. Funny, isn't it? Other European countries seem to manage these things. We never do.